Welcome to Tech with Kaushik. This is part 6 of our complete practice question series for the CLF-C02, AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner exam. Choose your answer before the timer ends, then review the correct answer, explanation, and exam tip. Let us begin part 6. Question number 284. An organization has a managed IAM policy that does not grant the necessary permissions for users to accomplish required tasks. How can this be resolved? Option A. Enable AWS Shield Advanced. Option B. Create a custom IAM policy. Option C. Use a third-party web application firewall, WAF, managed rule from the AWS Marketplace. Option D. Use AWS Key Management Service, AWS KMS, to create a customer-managed key. The correct answer is B. Create a custom IAM policy. Here is why. A customer-managed IAM policy can define the exact additional permissions that the users require. Why are the other options not correct? A. Shield Advanced provides enhanced DDoS protection. C. A WAF managed rule filters web requests. D. AWS KMS customer-managed keys control encryption key usage. Exam tip. Create a customer-managed policy when AWS managed policies do not fit the requirement. Question number 285. Who is responsible for managing IAM user access and secret keys under the AWS shared responsibility model? Option A. IAM access and secret keys are static, so there is no need to rotate them. Option B. The customer is responsible for rotating keys. Option C. AWS will rotate the keys whenever required. Option D. The AWS support team will rotate keys when requested by the customer. The correct answer is B. The customer is responsible for rotating keys. Here is why. Customers manage IAM user credentials, including protecting, disabling, and rotating access keys. Why are the other options not correct? A. Long-term access keys should be rotated or replaced with temporary credentials. C. AWS does not automatically rotate IAM user access keys. D. AWS support does not manage customer IAM credentials. Exam tip. Customers manage IAM credentials, prefer temporary credentials over long-term keys. Question number 286. What task can a company perform by using security groups in the AWS cloud? Option A. Allow access to an Amazon EC2 instance through only a specific port. Option B. Deny access to malicious IP addresses at a subnet level. Option C. Protect data that is cached by Amazon CloudFront. Option D. Apply a stateless firewall to an Amazon EC2 instance. The correct answer is A. Allow access to an Amazon EC2 instance through only a specific port. Here is why. Security group rules allow specified inbound and outbound traffic for associated instances and network interfaces. Why are the other options not correct? B. Network ACLs can deny traffic at the subnet level. C. CloudFront protection uses services such as AWS WAF and AWS Shield. D. Security groups are stateful, not stateless. Exam tip. Security groups are stateful allow-list firewalls for instances and interfaces. Question number 287. Which of the following are features of network ACLs as they are used in the AWS cloud? Choose 2. Option A. They are stateless. Option B. They are stateful. Option C. They evaluate all rules before allowing traffic. Option D. They process rules in order, starting with the lowest numbered rule, when deciding whether to allow traffic. E. They operate at the instance level. The correct answer is A. They are stateless. D. They process rules in order, starting with the lowest numbered rule. Here is why. Network ACLs are stateless subnet controls that evaluate numbered rules in ascending order until a matching rule is found. Why are the other options not correct? B. Security groups are stateful, network ACLs are stateless. C. Evaluation stops at the first matching rule. E. Network ACLs operate at the subnet level, not the instance level. Exam tip. Network ACLs are stateless, subnet level, and process rules in number order. Question number 288. What options are AWS Cloud Adoption Framework, AWS CAF, Security Perspective capabilities? Choose 2. Option A, Observability. Option B, Incident and Problem Management. Option C, Incident Response. Option D, Infrastructure Protection. E, Availability and Continuity. The correct answer is C, Incident Response, D, Infrastructure Protection. Here is why. Incident response and infrastructure protection are capabilities of the AWS CAF security perspective. Why are the other options not correct? A. Observability belongs to the operations perspective. B. Incident and problem management belongs to the operations perspective. E. Availability and continuity belongs to the operations perspective. Exam tip. AWS CAF security covers identity, detection, protection, and incident response. Question number 289. An organization needs to connect its on-premises data center to the AWS cloud. The company needs a dedicated, low-latency connection with consistent network performance. What AWS service can satisfy these requirements? Option A. AWS Global Accelerator. Option B, Amazon CloudFront. Option C, AWS Direct Connect. Option D, AWS Managed VPN. The correct answer is C, AWS Direct Connect. Here is why. Direct Connect provides a dedicated private connection from an on-premises network to AWS with more consistent performance than internet-based connectivity. Why are the other options not correct? A. Global Accelerator improves global application routing. B. CloudFront is a content delivery network. D. AWS Managed VPN uses encrypted connections over the internet. Exam tip. Direct Connect is dedicated, site-to-site VPN uses the public internet. Question number 290. Which of the following are pillars of the AWS well-architected framework? Choose 2. Option A, resource scalability. Option B, performance efficiency. Option C, system elasticity. Option D, agile development. E, operational excellence. The correct answer is B, performance efficiency, E, operational excellence. Here is why. Performance efficiency and operational excellence are named pillars of the AWS well-architected framework. Why are the other options not correct? A. Resource scalability is a design characteristic, not a named pillar. C. System elasticity is a cloud capability, not a named pillar. D. Agile development is not a named well-architected pillar. Exam tip. The framework has 6 pillars, including performance efficiency and operations. Question number 291. An organization is planning to migrate to the AWS cloud. The company needs to identify measurable business outcomes that will explain the value of the company's decision to migrate. What phase of the cloud transformation journey includes these activities? Option A, envision. Option B, align. Option C, scale. Option D, launch. The correct answer is A, envision. Here is why. The envision phase identifies transformation opportunities and measurable business outcomes that demonstrate cloud value. Why are the other options not correct? B. Align identifies capability gaps and creates an action plan. C. Scale expands successful cloud initiatives across the organization. D. Launch delivers pilot initiatives and initial business value. Exam tip. Envision defines outcomes, align finds gaps, launch pilots, scale expands. Question number 292. An organization has a physical tape library to store data backups. The tape library is running out of space. The company needs to extend the tape library's capacity to the AWS cloud. What AWS service should the company use to satisfy this requirement? Option A, Amazon Elastic File System, Amazon EFS. Option B, Amazon Elastic Block Store, Amazon EBS. Option C, Amazon S3. Option D, AWS Storage Gateway. The correct answer is D, AWS Storage Gateway. Here is why. Tape Gateway presents virtual tapes to existing backup software and stores backups in scalable AWS storage. Why are the other options not correct? A. Amazon EFS provides managed shared NFS file storage. B. Amazon EBS provides block storage for compute resources. C. Amazon S3 is object storage but does not directly emulate a tape library. Exam tip. Tape Gateway extends tape-based backup workflows into AWS. Question number 293. A global company needs to use a managed security service for protection from SQL injection attacks. The service also must provide detailed logging information about access to the company's e-commerce applications. What AWS service can satisfy these requirements? Option A, AWS Network Firewall. Option B, Amazon RDS for SQL Server. Option C, Amazon Guard Duty. Option D, AWS WAF. The correct answer is D, AWS WAF. Here is why. AWS WAF can inspect and block SQL injection patterns and provide detailed web ACL traffic logs. Why are the other options not correct? A. Network Firewall protects VPC network traffic, not web requests at the application layer. B. Amazon RDS for SQL Server is a managed relational database. C. Guard Duty detects threats but does not directly block SQL injection requests. Exam tip. WAF filters web exploits and logs requests. Shield protects against DDoS attacks. Question number 294. Which one of the following is the customer's responsibility under the AWS Shared Responsibility Model? Choose 2. Option A, maintain the configuration of infrastructure devices. Option B, maintain patching and updates within the hardware infrastructure. Option C, maintain the configuration of guest operating systems and applications. Option D, manage decisions involving encryption options. E, maintain infrastructure hardware. The correct answer is C, maintain guest operating systems and applications. D, manage decisions involving encryption options. Here is why. Customers configure and patch their guest operating systems and applications and choose how to encrypt their data. Why are the other options not correct? A. AWS maintains underlying infrastructure device configurations. B. AWS patches and updates the physical infrastructure. E. AWS maintains infrastructure hardware. Exam tip. Customers manage guest software and data protection choices. AWS manages hardware. Question number 295. What AWS service allows users to download security and compliance reports about the AWS infrastructure on demand? Option A, Amazon Guard Duty. Option B, AWS Security Hub. Option C, AWS Artifact. Option D, AWS Shield. The correct answer is C, AWS Artifact. Here is why. AWS Artifact provides on-demand access to AWS security and compliance reports and agreements. Why are the other options not correct? A. Guard Duty provides threat detection. B. Security Hub aggregates security findings. D. AWS Shield provides DDoS protection. Exam tip. Use AWS Artifact to retrieve AWS compliance reports for audits. Question number 296. An organization website is experiencing DDoS attacks. What AWS service can help protect the company website against these attacks? Option A, AWS Resource Access Manager. Option B, AWS Amplify. Option C, AWS Shield. Option D, Amazon Guard Duty. The correct answer is C. AWS Shield. Here is why. AWS Shield provides managed protection against distributed denial of service attacks on supported AWS resources. Why are the other options not correct? A. Resource Access Manager shares supported resources across accounts. B. AWS Amplify helps build and deploy web and mobile applications. D. Guard Duty detects threats from supported data sources. Exam tip. Shield protects against DDoS, while filters malicious web request patterns. Question number 297. An organization needs to migrate petabytes of data from its on-premises data center to AWS. The company does not want to use an internet connection to perform the migration. What AWS service can satisfy these requirements? Option A. AWS Data Sync. Option B. Amazon Connect. Option C. AWS Snowmobile. Option D. AWS Direct Connect. The correct answer is C. AWS Snowmobile. Here is why. Snowmobile was the historical AWS service for moving extremely large, petabyte-scale datasets without using an internet connection. Why are the other options not correct? A. DataSync transfers data through network connectivity. B. Amazon Connect is a cloud contact center service. D. Direct Connect provides dedicated network connectivity and is not offline transfer. Exam tip. Historical questions used Snowmobile for offline migrations measured in petabytes. Question number 298. Which one of the following is a characteristic of the AWS account root user? Option A. The root user is the only user that can be configured with multi-factor authentication, MFA. Option B. The root user is the only user that can access the AWS Management Console. Option C. The root user is the first sign-in identity that is available when an AWS account is created. Option D. The root user has a password that cannot be changed. The correct answer is C. The root user is the first sign-in identity available when an account is created. Here is why. Creating an AWS account creates one root identity with complete access to the account. Why are the other options not correct? A. Other AWS identities can also use MFA AB, IAM and IAM Identity Center users can access the console when configured. D. The root user password can be changed or reset. Exam tip. The root user is created with the account and should be reserved for root-only tasks. Question number 299. An organization's application developers need to quickly provision and manage AWS services by using scripts. What AWS offering should the developers use to satisfy these requirements? Option A. AWS CLI. Option B. AWS Code Build. Option C. AWS Cloud Adoption Framework, AWS CAF. Option D. AWS Systems Manager Session Manager. The correct answer is A. AWS CLI. Here is why. AWS CLI lets developers provision and manage AWS services through commands that can be placed in scripts. Why are the other options not correct? B. Code Build compiles and tests source code. C. AWS CAF guides organizational cloud transformation. D. Session Manager provides secure interactive access to managed nodes. Exam tip. Use AWS CLI for scriptable command line management of AWS services. Question number 300. An organization needs to migrate unstructured data to AWS. The data needs to be securely moved with in-flight encryption and end-to-end data validation. What AWS service can satisfy these requirements? Option A. AWS Application Migration Service. Option B. Amazon Elastic File System, Amazon EFS. Option C. AWS Data Sync. Option D. AWS Migration Hub. The correct answer is C. AWS Data Sync. Here is why. Data Sync securely transfers file and object data with encryption in transit and data integrity validation. Why are the other options not correct? A. Application Migration Service performs lift and shift server migration. B. Amazon EFS provides managed file storage and is not a migration service. D. Migration Hub tracks migration progress but does not transfer the data. Exam tip. Data Sync securely moves files and objects and validates transfer integrity. Question number 301. A development team needs to deploy multiple test environments for an application in a fast, repeatable manner. What AWS service should the team use? Option A. Amazon EC2. Option B. AWS CloudFormation. Option C. Amazon QuickSight. Option D. Amazon Elastic Container Service, Amazon ECS. The correct answer is B. AWS CloudFormation. Here is why. CloudFormation uses templates to provision the same AWS infrastructure repeatedly, making test environments fast and consistent. AWS documents repeatable infrastructure provisioning. Why are the other options not correct? A. Amazon EC2 supplies virtual servers but does not by itself define a repeatable full environment. C. Amazon QuickSight is a business intelligence and visualization service. D. Amazon ECS orchestrates containers rather than provisioning a complete test environment from templates. Exam tip. Use CloudFormation when the requirement emphasizes repeatable infrastructure from templates. Question number 302. An organization needs to quickly implement a continuous integration/continuous delivery (CI/CD) pipeline. What AWS service can satisfy this requirement? Option A. AWS Config. Option B. Amazon Cognito. Option C. AWS Data Sync. Option D. AWS CodeStar. The correct answer is D. AWS CodeStar. Here is why. CodeStar historically provided project templates and integrated AWS developer tools to quickly establish a CI/CD workflow. Why are the other options not correct? A. AWS Config records configurations and evaluates compliance. B. Cognito provides authentication and authorization for application users. C. DataSync transfers data between storage systems. Exam tip. CodeStar was the historical rapid start service for integrated CI/CD projects. Question number 303. What AWS cloud deployment model uses AWS Outposts as part of the application deployment infrastructure? Option A. On-premises. Option B. Serverless. Option C. Cloud native. Option D. Hybrid. The correct answer is D. Hybrid. Here is why. AWS Outposts extends AWS infrastructure and services into an on-premises location, combining on-premises resources with the AWS cloud. AWS describes Outposts as a hybrid cloud offering. Why are the other options not correct? A. On-premises alone does not include integrated AWS cloud infrastructure. B. Serverless is an execution model, not the deployment model represented by Outposts. C. Cloud-native applications run primarily in cloud environments and do not define this hybrid extension. Exam tip. Outposts extends AWS into customer sites, so its deployment model is hybrid. Question number 304. An e-commerce company needs to use Amazon EC2 auto-scaling to add and remove EC2 instances based on CPU utilization. What AWS service or feature can initiate an Amazon EC2 auto-scaling action to achieve this goal? Option A. Amazon Simple Queue Service, Amazon SQS. Option B. Amazon Simple Notification Service, Amazon SNS. Option C. AWS Systems Manager. Option D. Amazon Cloud Watch Alarm. The correct answer is D. Amazon CloudWatch Alarm. Here is why. A CloudWatch alarm can watch CPU utilization and invoke an EC2 auto-scaling policy when the configured threshold is reached. CloudWatch alarms support auto-scaling actions. Why are the other options not correct? A. Amazon SQS buffers messages and does not directly evaluate CPU thresholds. B. Amazon SNS distributes notifications but is not the metric alarm that initiates scaling. C. Systems Manager manages and operates resources but is not the CPU-based scaling trigger. Exam tip. CloudWatch alarm thresholds can trigger EC2 auto-scaling policies. Question number 305. Which one of the following is a fully managed graph database service on AWS? Option A. Amazon Aurora. Option B. Amazon FSx. Option C. Amazon DynamoDB. Option D. Amazon Neptune. The correct answer is D. Amazon Neptune. Here is why. Amazon Neptune is a fully managed graph database designed for highly connected data and graph relationships. AWS identifies Neptune as its managed graph database. Why are the other options not correct? A. Amazon Aurora is a relational database compatible with MySQL and PostgreSQL. B. Amazon FSx provides managed file systems, not a graph database. C. Amazon DynamoDB is a NoSQL key value and document database. Exam tip. Neptune is for graph data, Aurora is relational, and DynamoDB is key value and document. Question number 306. An organization has been storing monthly reports in an Amazon S3 bucket. The company exports the report data into comma-separated values. .csv files. A developer needs to write a simple query that can read all of these files and generate a summary report. What AWS service or feature should the developer use to satisfy these requirements with the least amount of operational overhead? Option A. Amazon S3 Select. Option B. Amazon Athena. Option C. Amazon Redshift. Option D. Amazon EC2. The correct answer is B. Amazon Athena. Here is why. Athena runs serverless SQL queries directly across CSV files in Amazon S3, with no database servers or clusters to manage. AWS documents Athena as serverless SQL for data in S3. Why are the other options not correct? A. Amazon S3 Select queries data within one S3 object, not a collection of monthly files as directly. C. Amazon Redshift requires a data warehouse and more setup for the simple S3 query. D. Amazon EC2 would require the developer to provision and manage query infrastructure. Exam tip. Use Athena for ad hoc SQL across files in S3 with minimal operational overhead. Question number 307. What AWS service could an administrator use to provide desktop environments for several employees? Option A. AWS Organizations. Option B. AWS Fargate. Option C. AWS WAF. Option D. AWS Workspaces. The correct answer is D. AWS Workspaces. Here is why. Amazon Workspaces provides managed virtual desktop environments that employees can access from supported devices. AWS documents Workspaces as a managed desktop service. Why are the other options not correct? A. AWS Organizations centrally manages multiple AWS accounts. B. AWS Fargate provides serverless compute for containers. C. AWS WAF filters supported web requests. Exam tip. Workspaces provides cloud desktops, AppStream provides streamed applications. Question number 308. What AWS feature provides a no-cost platform for AWS users to join community groups, ask questions, find answers, and read community? Generated articles about best practices? Option A. AWS Knowledge Center. Option B. AWS Read Post. Option C. AWS IQ. Option D. AWS Enterprise Support. The correct answer is B. AWS Read Post. Here is why. AWS Read Post is the community knowledge platform where users can ask questions, find answers, join groups, and read community content at no cost. AWS confirms Read Post is its public community platform. Why are the other options not correct? A. AWS Knowledge Center focuses on AWS-authored troubleshooting and support articles. C. AWS IQ is not the no-cost community question and answer platform. D. AWS Enterprise Support is a paid support offering. Exam tip. For community questions and shared AWS knowledge, choose AWS Read Post. Question number 309. What AWS service or feature gives users the ability to capture information about network traffic in a VPC? Option A. VPC flow logs. Option B. Amazon Inspector. Option C. VPC route tables. Option D. AWS CloudTrail. The correct answer is A. VPC flow logs. Here is why. VPC flow logs capture information about IP traffic going to and from network interfaces in a VPC. AWS documents this network traffic capture purpose. Why are the other options not correct? B. Amazon Inspector assesses supported workloads for software vulnerabilities and exposure. C. VPC route tables determine traffic routes but do not record traffic flows. D. CloudTrail records supported AWS API and account activity, not VPC packet flow metadata. Exam tip. Flow logs capture VPC traffic metadata, CloudTrail records AWS API activity. Question number 310. An organization needs to search for text in documents that are stored in Amazon S3. What AWS service can satisfy these requirements? Option A. Amazon Kendra. Option B. Amazon Rekognition. Option C. Amazon Poly. Option D. Amazon Lex. The correct answer is A. Amazon Kendra. Here is why. Amazon Kendra provides intelligent enterprise search and can index documents stored in Amazon S3. AWS states that new customer access ends July 30, 2026. Why are the other options not correct? B. Amazon Rekognition analyzes images and video rather than providing document search. C. Amazon Poly converts text to speech. D. Amazon Lex builds conversational interfaces. Exam tip. Kendra searches enterprise documents, TextTract extracts document text and fields. Question number 311. What AWS services make use of global edge locations? Choose 2. Option A. AWS Fargate. Option B. Amazon CloudFront. Option C. AWS Global Accelerator. Option D. AWS Wavelength. E. Amazon VPC. The correct answer is B. Amazon CloudFront. C. AWS Global Accelerator. Here is why. CloudFront serves content through edge locations, and Global Accelerator routes traffic through the AWS Global Edge Network. Both services use AWS edge locations. Why are the other options not correct? A. AWS Fargate runs containers without managing servers and does not use global edge locations. D. AWS Wavelength places services in telecom 5G networks, not the AWS Global Edge Network. E. Amazon VPC is a regional virtual network. Exam tip. CloudFront caches content at the edge, Global Accelerator improves global application routing. Question number 312. What type of AWS storage is ephemeral and is deleted when an Amazon EC2 instance is stopped or terminated? Option A. Amazon Elastic Block Store, Amazon EBS. Option B. Amazon EC2 Instance Store. Option C. Amazon Elastic File System, Amazon EFS. Option D. Amazon S3. The correct answer is B. Amazon EC2 Instance Store. Here is why. Instance Store is temporary storage physically attached to the host, and its data is lost when the instance is stopped, hibernated, or terminated. AWS documents instance store data loss on stop or termination. Why are the other options not correct? A. Amazon EBS volumes persist when an instance stops and can persist after termination. C. Amazon EFS is durable shared file storage independent of one EC2 host. D. Amazon S3 is durable object storage independent of EC2 lifecycle events. Exam tip. Instance store is ephemeral, EBS is persistent block storage. Question number 313. An organization needs to deploy applications in the AWS cloud as quickly as possible. The company also needs to minimize the complexity that is related to the management of AWS resources. What AWS service should the company use to satisfy these requirements? Option A. AWS Config. Option B. AWS Elastic Beanstalk. Option C. Amazon EC2. Option D. Amazon Personalize. The correct answer is B. AWS Elastic Beanstalk. Here is why. Elastic Beanstalk deploys applications and manages supporting resources such as capacity, load balancing, scaling, and health monitoring. AWS documents this managed application deployment capability. Why are the other options not correct? A. AWS Config records resource configurations and evaluates compliance. C. Amazon EC2 provides servers but leaves more deployment and resource management to the company. D. Amazon Personalize creates machine learning recommendations. Exam tip. Elastic Beanstalk simplifies application deployment while retaining access to AWS resources. Question number 314. An organization needs to provide access to Windows file shares in AWS from its on-premises workloads. The company does not want to provision any additional infrastructure or applications in its data center. What AWS service can satisfy these requirements? Option A. Amazon FSx File Gateway. Option B. AWS Data Sync. Option C. Amazon S3. Option D. AWS Snow Family. The correct answer is A. Amazon FSx File Gateway. Here is why. FSx File Gateway historically provided on-premises access to Windows file shares stored in Amazon FSx for Windows File Server. Why are the other options not correct? B. DataSync transfers files but does not provide a continuously accessible SMB gateway. C. Amazon S3 is object storage and does not directly provide Windows SMB shares. D. Snow Family was designed mainly for offline transfer and disconnected edge use. Exam tip. FSx File Gateway historically exposed cloud-hosted FSx Windows shares over SMB. Question number 315. An organization wants durable storage for static content and infinitely scalable data storage infrastructure at the lowest cost. What AWS service should the company choose? Option A. Amazon Elastic Block Store, Amazon EBS. Option B. Amazon S3. Option C. AWS Storage Gateway. Option D. Amazon Elastic File System, Amazon EFS. The correct answer is B. Amazon S3. Here is why. Amazon S3 provides highly durable, massively scalable object storage that is well suited to static content and usage-based low-cost storage. AWS describes S3 as durable and highly scalable object storage. Why are the other options not correct? A. Amazon EBS is block storage for compute workloads and does not scale like S3 object storage. C. AWS Storage Gateway provides hybrid access between on-premises applications and AWS storage. D. Amazon EFS provides shared file storage and is not the lowest cost choice for static objects. Exam tip. Choose S3 for scalable static object storage, choose EBS or EFS for block or file access. Question number 316. What AWS services are supported by savings plans? Choose 2. Option A. Amazon EC2. Option B. Amazon RDS. Option C. Amazon SageMaker. Option D. Amazon Redshift. E. Amazon DynamoDB. The correct answer is A. Amazon EC2, C. Amazon SageMaker. Here is why. In the scope intended by this historical question, savings plans provided discounted pricing for eligible EC2 and SageMaker compute usage. Why are the other options not correct? B. Amazon RDS was not covered by the savings plan scope tested by this question. D. Amazon Redshift was not supported by the referenced savings plans offering. E. DynamoDB was not covered by the savings plan scope tested by this question. Exam tip. This item is outdated. Always verify the services covered by current savings plans. Question number 317. A library needs to automate the classification of electronic books based on the contents of the books. What AWS service should the library use to satisfy this requirement? Option A. Amazon Redshift. Option B. Amazon Cloud Search. Option C. Amazon Comprehend. Option D. Amazon Aurora. The correct answer is C. Amazon Comprehend. Here is why. Amazon Comprehend uses natural language processing to analyze text and can classify documents by their content. AWS documents custom text classification in Comprehend. Why are the other options not correct? A. Amazon Redshift is a data warehouse. B. Amazon Cloud Search provides search capabilities rather than content classification. D. Amazon Aurora is a managed relational database. Exam tip. Use Comprehend for text insights and classification, use Kendra for enterprise search. Question number 318. An organization wants a web application to interact with various AWS services. What AWS service or resource can satisfy this requirement? Option A. AWS Cloud Shell. Option B. AWS Marketplace. Option C. AWS Management Console. Option D. AWS CLI. The correct answer is C. AWS Management Console. Here is why. The AWS Management Console is a web-based graphical interface that allows users to access and interact with various AWS services. Why are the other options not correct? A. AWS Cloud Shell provides a browser-based command-line environment. B. AWS Marketplace is used to discover and purchase third-party software and services. D. AWS CLI provides command-line access rather than a graphical web application. Exam tip. The Management Console is web-based. The AWS CLI and Cloud Shell are command-line tools. Question number 319. An organization is migrating its applications from on-premises to the AWS cloud. The company needs to ensure that the applications are assigned only the minimum permissions that are needed to perform all operations. What AWS service can satisfy these requirements? Option A. AWS Identity and Access Management, IAM. Option B. Amazon CloudWatch. Option C. Amazon May-C. Option D. Amazon Guard Duty. The correct answer is A. AWS Identity and Access Management, IAM. Here is why. IAM policies control permissions to AWS resources and support least privilege by granting only the actions required for each workload. AWS defines least privilege as granting only required permissions. Why are the other options not correct? B. Amazon CloudWatch monitors metrics, logs, and alarms. C. Amazon May-C discovers and helps protect sensitive data in Amazon S3. D. Amazon Guard Duty detects potential threats, it does not assign application permissions. Exam tip. Use IAM policies and roles to grant workloads only the permissions they need. Question number 320. An organization launched an Amazon EC2 instance with the latest Amazon Linux 2 Amazon Machine Image, AMI. What actions can a system administrator take to connect to the EC2 instance? Choose 2. Option A. Use Amazon EC2 Instance Connect. Option B. Use a Remote Desktop Protocol, RDP, connection. Option C. Use AWS Batch. Option D. Use AWS Systems Manager Session Manager. E. Use Amazon Connect. The correct answer is A. I use Amazon EC2 Instance Connect. D. Use AWS Systems Manager Session Manager. Here is why. EC2 Instance Connect provides SSH access to supported Linux instances, and Session Manager provides managed shell access when its prerequisites are configured. AWS documents both Linux connection methods. Why are the other options not correct? B. RDP is primarily used to connect to Windows instances, not Amazon Linux 2. C. AWS Batch schedules batch jobs and is not an interactive instance connection method. E. Amazon Connect is a cloud contact center service. Exam tip. For Linux EC2 access, distinguish SSH-based Instance Connect from Managed Session Manager. Question number 321. What does the Amazon S3 Intelligent Tiering Storage class offer? Option A. Payment flexibility by reserving storage capacity. Option B. Long-term retention of data by copying the data to an encrypted Amazon Elastic Block Store, Amazon EBS, volume. Option C. Automatic cost savings by moving objects between tiers based on access pattern changes. Option D is secure, durable, and lowest cost storage for data archival. The correct answer is C. Automatic cost savings by moving objects between tiers based on access pattern changes. Here is why. S3 Intelligent Tiering monitors access patterns and automatically moves objects to the most cost-effective access tier as those patterns change. AWS documents this automatic tiering behavior. Why are the other options not correct? A. S3 Intelligent Tiering does not require reserving storage capacity. B. It does not copy data to an EBS volume for retention. D. Dedicated archival storage describes Glacier-oriented classes, not the complete feature. Exam tip. Intelligent tiering is for changing or unknown access patterns and automates tier movement. Question number 322. A solutions architect needs to maintain a fleet of Amazon EC2 instances so that any impaired instances are replaced with new ones. What AWS service should the solutions architect use? Option A. Amazon Elastic Container Service, Amazon ECS. Option B. Amazon Guard Duty. Option C. AWS Shield. Option D. AWS Autoscaling. The correct answer is D. AWS Autoscaling. Here is why. Amazon EC2 Autoscaling detects unhealthy instances in an autoscaling group and replaces them to maintain the desired capacity. AWS documents automatic replacement of unhealthy instances. Why are the other options not correct? A. Amazon ECS orchestrates containers, it is not the EC2 fleet health replacement service here. B. Amazon Guard Duty detects potential security threats. C. AWS Shield provides DDoS protection. Exam tip. EC2 autoscaling maintains desired capacity and replaces unhealthy group instances. Question number 323. What AWS service provides on-premises applications with low latency access to data that is stored in the AWS cloud? Option A. Amazon CloudFront. Option B. AWS Storage Gateway. Option C. AWS Backup. Option D. AWS Data Sync. The correct answer is B. AWS Storage Gateway. Here is why. Storage Gateway connects on-premises applications to AWS storage and uses local caching to provide low-latency access to cloud data. AWS documents file access with transparent local caching. Why are the other options not correct? A. CloudFront accelerates content delivery to users through edge locations. C. AWS Backup centrally manages backups but does not provide active low-latency file access. D. AWS Data Sync transfers data between storage systems rather than providing cached ongoing access. Exam tip. Storage Gateway is for hybrid storage access, Data Sync is for managed data transfer. Question number 324. What AWS service is a relational database compatible with MySQL and PostgreSQL? Option A. Amazon Redshift. Option B. Amazon DynamoDB. Option C. Amazon Aurora. Option D. Amazon Neptune. The correct answer is C, Amazon Aurora. Here is why. Amazon Aurora is a managed relational database with MySQL-compatible and PostgreSQL-compatible additions. AWS documents both Aurora compatibility options. Why are the other options not correct? A. Amazon Redshift is a data warehouse. B. Amazon DynamoDB is a NoSQL key value and document database. D. Amazon Neptune is a graph database. Exam tip. Aurora is relational and compatible with MySQL and PostgreSQL. Question number 325. What architecture design principle describes the need to isolate failures between dependent components in the AWS cloud? Option A. Use a monolithic design. Option B. Design for automation. Option C. Design for single points of failure. Option D. Loosely coupled components. The correct answer is D. Loosely coupled components. Here is why. Loose coupling reduces dependencies so that a failure in one component is less likely to cascade into dependent components. AWS guidance uses loose coupling to isolate component failures. Why are the other options not correct? A. A monolithic design increases component interdependence. B. Automation improves repeatability but does not itself isolate dependent component failures. C. Designing for single points of failure reduces resilience and is an anti-pattern. Exam tip. Loose coupling contains failures and lets components scale or recover independently. Question number 326. What benefit of cloud computing gives a company the ability to deploy applications to users all over the world through a network of AWS regions, availability zones, and edge locations? Option A. Economy of scale. Option B. Global reach. Option C. Agility. Option D. High availability. The correct answer is B. Global reach. Here is why. Global reach is the ability to deploy applications near users worldwide by using AWS regions, availability zones, and edge network locations. AWS operates global regions, availability zones, and edge locations. Why are the other options not correct? A. Economies of scale reduce per unit costs through large-scale operations. C. Agility is the ability to provision and experiment quickly. D. High availability focuses on continued service during component failures. Exam tip. Worldwide deployment is global reach, rapid deployment is agility. Question number 327. What AWS service makes it easier to monitor and troubleshoot application logs and cloud resources? Option A. Amazon EC2. Option B. AWS Identity and Access Management, IAM. Option C. Amazon CloudWatch. Option D. AWS CloudTrail. The correct answer is C. Amazon CloudWatch. Here is why. CloudWatch collects and monitors metrics and logs for AWS resources and applications, supporting operational troubleshooting and alarms. AWS documents CloudWatch monitoring for resources and applications. Why are the other options not correct? A. Amazon EC2 provides virtual compute capacity. B. IAM manages identities and permissions. D. CloudTrail records supported AWS API and account activity for auditing. Exam tip. CloudWatch monitors operations, CloudTrail audits API activity. Question number 328. What AWS service uses AWS Compute Optimizer to provide sizing recommendations based on workload metrics? Option A. Amazon EC2. Option B. Amazon RDS. Option C. Amazon Lightsail. Option D. AWS Step Functions. The correct answer is A. Amazon EC2. Here is why. The historical question expected Compute Optimizer using EC2 workload metrics to recommend appropriately sized EC2 instance configurations. Why are the other options not correct? B. Current Compute Optimizer capabilities also support RDS, making this option now plausible. C. Lightsail is not the resource intended by this Compute Optimizer question. D. Step functions coordinates workflows rather than hosting resizable compute instances. Exam tip. This question is outdated because Compute Optimizer now supports additional resources. Question number 329. What AWS service will help a company plan a migration to AWS by collecting the configuration, usage, and behavior data of on-premises data centers? Option A. AWS Resource Groups. Option B. AWS Application Discovery Service. Option C. AWS Service Catalog. Option D. AWS Systems Manager. The correct answer is B. AWS Application Discovery Service. Here is why. Application Discovery Service collects on-premises configuration and usage data to support migration planning and dependency analysis. AWS documents this purpose and the availability change. Why are the other options not correct? A. AWS Resource Groups organizes AWS resources after they exist in an account. C. AWS Service Catalog distributes approved cloud products. D. AWS Systems Manager operates and manages supported resources rather than discovering a data center. Exam tip. Discovery data supports migration planning. Migration Hub tracks migration progress. Question number 330. What AWS service uses a combination of publishers and subscribers? Option A. AWS Lambda. Option B. Amazon Simple Notification Service, Amazon SNS. Option C. Amazon CloudWatch. Option D. AWS CloudFormation. The correct answer is B. Amazon Simple Notification Service, Amazon SNS. Here is why. Amazon SNS implements publish-subscribe messaging. Publishers send messages to topics, and subscribers receive copies through their configured endpoints. AWS identifies SNS as a managed publisher-subscriber service. Why are the other options not correct? A. AWS Lambda runs event-driven code but is not itself the publish-subscribe messaging service. C. Amazon CloudWatch monitors resources and applications. D. AWS CloudFormation provisions infrastructure from templates. Exam tip. SNS is publish-subscribe fanout, SQS is durable queue-based decoupling. Question number 331. An organization is in the early stages of planning a migration to AWS. The company needs to obtain the monthly predicted total AWS cost of ownership for future Amazon EC2 instances and associated storage. What AWS service or tool should the company use to satisfy these requirements? Option A. AWS Pricing Calculator. Option B. AWS Compute Optimizer. Option C. AWS Trusted Advisor. Option D. AWS Application Migration Service. The correct answer is A. AWS Pricing Calculator. Here is why. AWS Pricing Calculator estimates the monthly cost of planned EC2 instances, storage, and other AWS resources before deployment. Why are the other options not correct? B. Compute Optimizer recommends configurations for existing resources from utilization data. C. Trusted Advisor provides best practice checks and recommendations. D. Application Migration Service migrates servers to AWS. Exam tip. Pricing Calculator estimates planned costs. Cost Explorer analyzes actual costs. Question number 332. An organization needs to establish a private network connection between AWS and its corporate network. What AWS service or feature can satisfy this requirement? Option A. Amazon Connect. Option B. Amazon Route 53. Option C. AWS Direct Connect. Option D. VPC peering. The correct answer is C. AWS Direct Connect. Here is why. Direct Connect establishes a dedicated private network connection between an organization's network and AWS. Why are the other options not correct? A. Amazon Connect is a cloud contact center service. B. Route 53 provides DNS and traffic routing services. D. VPC peering connects two VPCs, not a corporate network, directly to AWS. Exam tip. Direct Connect provides dedicated private connectivity from an external network to AWS. Question number 333. What AWS service converts text to lifelike voices? Option A. Amazon Transcribe. Option B. Amazon Recognition. Option C. Amazon Poly. Option D. Amazon Textract. The correct answer is C. Amazon Poly. Here is why. Amazon Poly is a text-to-speech service that converts text into lifelike spoken audio. Why are the other options not correct? A. Amazon Transcribe converts speech to text. B. Amazon Recognition analyzes images and videos. D. Amazon Textract extracts text and structured information from documents. Exam tip. Poly converts text to speech, Transcribe converts speech to text. Question number 334. What AWS service or tool can provide right-sizing recommendations for Amazon EC2 resources at no additional cost? Option A. AWS well-architected tool. Option B. Amazon Cloud Watch. Option C. AWS Cost Explorer. Option D. Amazon S3 Analytics. The correct answer is C. AWS Cost Explorer. Here is why. Cost Explorer provides right-sizing recommendations that identify idle or underutilized EC2 instances and potential cost savings. Why are the other options not correct? A. Well-architected tool reviews workloads against architectural best practices. B. CloudWatch supplies monitoring data but is not the listed right-sizing recommendation tool. D. S3 Analytics evaluates S3 storage access patterns. Exam tip. Cost Explorer can identify EC2 right-sizing opportunities from cost and usage data. Question number 335. What task is a responsibility of AWS under the AWS Shared Responsibility Model? Option A. Encryption of application data. Option B. Authentication of application users. Option C. Protection of physical network infrastructure. Option D. Configuration of firewalls. The correct answer is C. Protection of physical network infrastructure. Here is why. AWS is responsible for securing the facilities, hardware, networking, and other infrastructure that operates AWS cloud services. Why are the other options not correct? A. Customers choose and configure encryption for their application data. B. Customers manage authentication for users of their applications. D. Customers configure firewalls such as security group and network ACL rules. Exam tip. AWS secures the cloud infrastructure, customers secure their data and configurations. Question number 336. What options are AWS Cloud Adoption Framework, AWS CAF, Cloud Transformation Journey recommendations? Choose 2. Option A. Envision phase. Option B. Align phase. Option C. Assess phase. Option D. Mobilize phase. E. Migrate and modernize phase. The correct answer is A. Envision phase, B. Align phase. Here is why. Envision and Align are two of the 4 AWS CAF cloud transformation phases. Envision identifies opportunities, while Align identifies capability gaps and dependencies. Why are the other options not correct? C. Assess is associated with migration readiness activities, not the current CAF journey phases. D. Mobilize is an AWS migration process phase. E. Migrate and modernize is a migration process phase, not a CAF transformation phase. Exam tip. AWS CAF phases are Envision, Align, Launch, and Scale. Question number 337. An organization is designing its AWS workload so that components can be updated regularly and so that changes can be made in small, reversible increments. What pillar of the AWS well-architected framework does this design support? Option A, security. Option B, performance efficiency. Option C, operational excellence. Option D, reliability. The correct answer is C, operational excellence. Here is why. Operational excellence recommends frequent, small, reversible changes so that workloads can evolve while limiting the impact of unsuccessful updates. Why are the other options not correct? A. Security focuses on protecting information, systems, and assets. B. Performance efficiency focuses on using computing resources efficiently. D. Reliability focuses on consistent operation and recovery from failures. Exam tip. Small, frequent, reversible changes are an operational excellence design principle. You have completed Part 6 of the CLF-C02 practice series. Continue your preparation by opening the complete playlist and watching the remaining parts in sequence. Please like this video, subscribe to Tech with Kaushik, and enable notifications for more certification exam preparation content. Share your score, questions, or feedback in the comments. Thank you for watching. See you in the next part.